Okay, so I have a question there in chat. It says, is Vedanta the only path to achieve moksha? Or can some find it through another route or religion? Vedanta, Vedanta is not a path. Vedanta is not a path, Vedanta is not a religion, and Vedanta is the only way. So, how is that so? It's because if you have a misunderstanding that Vedanta is an alternative religion, then your question makes sense. But if you say, no, it's a philosophy, Vedanta comes from two roots: vid, to know, to see; anta, the finality of it, the ultimate thing that you can see, the ultimate truth. Being an absolute, it's either true or it's not true. There's no other way. It's not a relative kind of truth. And so it is only through Vedanta. Now, I mentioned this at one talk, and one listener was shocked, thinking that Vedanta is something like Buddhism, something like Christianity, something, it's an alternative kind of religion. And that's not how it works, not at all. What did Christ teach? Vedanta. What did Buddha teach? Vedanta. What did all the great teachers teach? Vedanta. What did Plato and Socrates teach? Vedanta. Anything that is absolutely true and verified by direct experience, this is Vedanta. And we're not talking of the superficial relative world. We're talking of the higher knowledge. So we find in the Mundaka Upanishad this separation of two kinds of knowledge, of Paravidya and Paravidya, higher knowledge and lower knowledge. And within lower knowledge is also scripture. Scripture itself is in the lower knowledge. It's as if, it's like, you see, and somebody put it in text in the chat group today, I think it was, a wonderful saying from Ramakrishna, you see. If you know where, and he was talking of Benares, what's called Varanasi now. If you know where Varanasi is on the map, and you can identify it geographically, you don't know Varanasi if you've never been there. You have to visit it. It's very clear. So Vedanta is the fundamental truth. Now, how you express it and how you realize the truths within it, this will be many and varied. There'll probably be about 7 billion ways, since there's 7 billion people on the planet. Because we're all constitutionally different. We have to find our own way. But it falls into 4 necessary categories. Why is that? It's because we're only doing it through the psyche, through the mind. And the mind has 4 faculties, 4 kinds of groupings of talents. In other words, you see, we have a capacity to feel. We have a capacity to be emotional and express our emotions. We have a capacity to think and analyze and decide. And we have the capacity to work. We have the capacity to express energy as work. And we have the capacity for sitting and going introspectively into a mode of self-discovery where the mind becomes calm and balanced. These 4 dimensions, as it were, of the mind are called yogas. They come out as yogas. And so there is bhakti yoga for those who have a devotional nature, jnana yoga for those who are more intellectual, karma yoga for the highly active, and then of course we have dhyana yoga, which is meditation, common to all of them. So these are the ways, the different ways. And then we have to take advantage of our own upbringing. There's a famous dialogue between one of the Shankaracharyas and a Christian who comes for conversion to Hinduism. And the purport of the conversation goes something like this: I want to be a convert. And the Shankaracharya tells him, it's not possible. We don't convert anybody. You don't convert anybody. Surely you think your religion is the highest religion and is worth people converting to? He said, the point is, you're already a Hindu. You can't convert to some religion that you're already a member of. Because what we call Hinduism is really this Vedanta. And Vedanta holds the highest truths. We may say truths because there are truths that lead up to it in a series of plus, plus, plus. Does this world exist as a material universe? Yes, we don't deny it. But there's more. Does this universe work? Is there a series of ideals? Is there idealism? Is it all just a series of ideals? Yes, but there's more. Is there a creator God? Yes, but there's more. We call it cosmic mind. There's more. Is there an impersonal God like an Allah or a Yahweh? Yes, but there's more. There's more? Yes. Meister Eckhart put it like this. He put it in the language of Godhead and God. God is there, but there's more. Godhead. Is God and Godhead different and separate? No. It's the same thing. One is qualified, the other one is unqualified. That's all. Two sides of the same coin, as it were. And when you sit in the transcendent, all the relative disappears. And when you sit in the relative, you have no inkling, you have no real understanding or realization of the transcendent. Supposing you experience the transcendent, as it were, and you then experience the relative, you always know the transcendent. And you can cross the border anytime you want. That is freedom. You can play your musical instrument or not. That is freedom. Freedom is to go in and out if you like. It's up to you. And the highest realization will be to the practical application of the Vedanta, which is to see the divine in all beings. And that stimulates the spirit of service. Uplift the poor, yes. Do all the philanthropic work, social service, not with the idea I feel better for it, not with the idea of changing something, not with the idea of adjusting something or criticizing something, but with the idea of worship. And so that is the motto, really, of the Ramakrishna order, which is for one's own freedom and for the good of the world. Both are necessary. Otherwise,
sorry, I just wanted to. So you saying then that, like, say, Brother Lawrence, for example, I don't know if he actually studied any texts like that were Vedanta.
Hopefully not.
What? Sorry?
Hopefully not.
But would someone like him, like, would that have been possibly his last life? Like, because he seems to have the philosophy. Is that what you're saying? So if you have that understanding, then in a way, you are already there.
Yes, because as I said, the Mundaka Upanishad makes two categories of knowledge, higher knowledge and lower knowledge. And within the knowledge will be books, scriptures. They can be useful, they can also be confusing. Because you see, a scripture alone is not a standalone by itself. It requires a competent teacher to explain it. And then that's on the one side. This is all the lower knowledge. And then when you practically apply it and get this understanding of it, this is the higher knowledge, Paravidya. Paravidya, the realization, as we were talking about, realization of Brahman, the highest principle. So Brother Lawrence probably had this. Certainly, there's no doubt that he would have practiced the presence, that's the book, and it would have been something real, and we know he experienced joy. Paradoxically, he wasn't happy about experiencing the joy. He said, I only have one complaint. I went into the monastery in order to punish all my sins and lead a tough life and have this kind of discipline that would be hardship and struggle, penance, and austerity. And what did I find? Only joy and happiness. So these great mystics and saints come to a point of common realization. Why? Because the truth is only one. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. Truth is one. But wise people call it variously. It goes back to the Rig Veda. Truth is one. Wise people call it by different names, according to their cultural backgrounds, according to their teaching. What will people understand? A good teacher will take the person's understanding, talk in the language framed according to that understanding, and lead the seeker gradually, bit by bit, to higher or deeper understandings according to a person's capacity. A child starts at kindergarten. You want to teach the child something like 1 + 1 is 2 and so on. Use apples and oranges and things. You don't teach them calculus. It would have no meaning for them. So you see this intellectualism, the Upanishads themselves tell us, you see, not through this intellectual pursuit, not through scriptural study, not through too much reading, and through none of this. Shankaracharya, the great scholar, also tells it in the Viveka Chudamani. It's not through this scholarship, not through that. That becomes a diversion. Then why is it that Swami Purnananda studies all these books? Even now as I'm sitting, you see an array of books in front of me, probably from Tuesday or Monday night, some of it. Okay. Well, because my job is to see if I can help remove the doubts of everybody. That means I have to have a wide scope at my fingertips. But for anybody else, no, it's not necessary. You have to understand the principles, no doubt. But having understood the principles, I can read all the kinds of books about Wimbledon and tennis. That doesn't make me a good tennis player. I have to stand on the court, I have to practice endlessly. I have to have a machine firing balls at me. And when I learn not to duck, but to return them back and to do it confidently, then I have some kind of mastery. So if you want to get mastery of the mind, which is really what spirituality is, then it requires understanding the mind, understanding the principles of what you're studying, in other words, what you're trying to get to grips of, the relative world, understanding that fully, what we call prakriti, and understanding what is behind it, what is called Atman or Purusha. And then understanding that, what is the process? It's practice. I think you asked a question about practice and principle. How much should we study? Yeah. So book learning is a confusion. Let's illustrate it. Ramakrishna, this great mystic, he studied his own mind. He had no need of studying scriptures. He was illiterate. He wasn't a learned man. Vivekananda was a learned man. And that's why he was able to voice his master's realizations to the world. Wonderful. But you see, he was a deep meditator. He was somebody who practiced what he preached. That was what convinced Sister Nivedita to follow him. She'd heard all the principles before. Wasn't impressive. But the man himself, that's who she followed. Holy Mother, not very learned. She learned to read a little bit, But what incredible wisdom she had. And she shows us how to lead a spiritual life in the midst of busyness, in the midst of normal, everyday working, waking life, and still remain tuned into the divine. So all these mystics and so on and so forth, not necessarily learned people. And those that are learned will have to make sure that their practice exceeds their learning. Otherwise, their learning becomes mere intellectual gymnastics. It becomes only suitable for debate. And debate is a boxing match, an intellectual boxing match. One person stands in a corner, another person stands in a corner, and then they start boxing each other intellectually and sticking to their positions. So realization, as we've been discussing it, has very little to do with books. Then should we have scripture at all? Yes. Let's, for example, see how can you fix a car? Well, there's a manual is supplied. You don't automatically know how to fix it. You study the manual. What is scripture? Scripture is a manual that tells you, do this A, B, C, and D. It is not asking God to make a correction or revelation. It provides us with some do's and don'ts. It provides us for some guidelines to behavior. And then, once we then understand it, at least intellectually, we can then take our spanners. Tools are necessary. And philosophy gives us tools. Three major tools are there. Three categories of tools are there. Dualism, qualified non-dualism, and absolute non-dualism are there. And the multi-purpose tool for everything will be non-dualism. It'll solve every problem. But it's not just intellectual armchair meanderings, pontifications, scholarship. No. Otherwise, there's no point in it, really. Some people have heard about milk. Some people have seen milk. Other people have tasted it. Only the people who tasted it will know it.
Thanks, Swami.
Okay. You see, and we have, the Enneagram will tell us, you see, about these three broad types of people, those inclined towards intellect, those inclined towards emotion, those inclined towards doing or willing. And we have to be balanced in all these three. Okay, let us see. So, Sri Ramakrishna said to a devotee that the man who cries when listening to God's name has reached his final life. Is that emotion, the connection, self-realization in that moment? Well, you see, it's in the context of a number of different stories. What is necessary to realize, and let's put it in theistic language, realize God. And Ramakrishna's answer to this was, well, he demonstrated it, but the answer was yearning. Of course, he said, you have to have the same yearning that a miser has for his money, that a wife has for the husband, see, that you have for your own life. There's a story, he tells about the teacher who takes the student to a body of water, let's say a lake. All of a sudden he plunges him in and holds him down. And when he sees the student really, really desperately struggling, bubbling water come up, don't try this at home. Then you see the man comes up. How did you feel? The student says, I felt as if I was going to die. I was yearning, I was desperate for air. When you have this kind of yearning for God, you can say God or the truth, then know that realization is near. And with that realization, freedom. So we have to develop this yearning. So there's a qualification for students, qualification for teachers, and qualification for students. And the Vivekeshwaramani of Shankaracharya Mana, the text, will tell us what these qualifications are. 4 qualifications are necessary. We have to develop vivek above everything else. When I was at a recent conference, European Union for Yoga, I was there as a guest of honor, and the subject was vivek. And why is it such an important subject? Because without it, nothing else happens. And when we go astray, it's because of loss of it. Loss of reasoning, loss of discerning attitude. And it's related to that prayer of discernment. In the peace prayer, Asato Ma is found in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyoti Gamaya, Mrityo Mamritam Gamaya. Lead us from the unreal to the real. We don't need any of the others. Lead us from the unreal to the real. All the other statements are variations of it. So how do we know what is real and what is unreal? And what do we mean by reality? If I bang my head on a table, is that not real? If I ask a carpenter, please make me a desk, some 2.5 meters long and 1.5 meters wide, and use a certain type of wood. That makes sense to the carpenter. I can't tell him, by the way, your job is hopeless, it's all unreal. Or say to the physicist, or say, according to our physicists, it's a whole bunch of atoms spaced out so much you can't see. It looks like a solid thing, but actually, theoretically, you don't have to bang your head. Your head is full of atoms and the table is full of atoms and there's vast space in between. And it's true for most people, the vast space in the brain. But then you hit it, then what will happen? It should all go through it. What's stopping it? Well, what's stopping it is electrical energy is stopping it. An electrical field. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is stopping it. But we don't know that. We don't tell a carpenter all of this. He's not interested in this. He wants to know, please tell me what kind of wood, what are the dimensions, and when do you want delivery? So it's not that we ignore the relative world. The relative world is real from a relative point of view. Relative to what? Relative to the senses. And the web in which they operate, namely time and space, causation and function, nama rupa kriya, name and form and function. So the relative world we don't deny, but what is real means what is permanent. In other words, what never changes must be real. Something appears and disappears. You can't say it's real, you'll rub your eyes. An elephant appears in the room and disappears. You'll rub your eyes, you can't believe it. A mirage in a desert. You approach it, it all disappears. Then your belief ceases that it is an oasis, it is a place with fresh spring water. No, it's a shimmering effect of different pressures and temperatures. That's all. Looking like trees, looking like flowers, looking like a garden. It's a mirage. Now, how do we realize this? Normally speaking, progressively. By first applying the principles, understanding the logic of what is real and what is not real. And we do it by a process of elimination. We know what is not permanent. And this is useful. It has a practical use. Somebody dies. We gloss it over. We say they passed away. Mother had a happy death. I don't know. All these kinds of things which stop us from experiencing the pain of death because we think death somehow is a permanent end to our bank account, which it is, a permanent end to our body, our friends, our housing, all of these things. Fine. We think it's absolutely the end of the world, but it is an inevitable thing. And it is only those people who understand death is a comma, not a full stop, they won't grieve. The wise grieve neither for the living and the dead, says the Bhagavad Gita. And I said this to somebody who is a bereavement counselor. I was also a bereavement counselor. But from your point of view, you shouldn't grieve, but grieving is our whole healing process that we have. I said, yes, but we're not wise. The wise don't grieve for the living and the dead. Those who are not wise, those who are fools, will believe in all this reincarnation, but it's reincarnation of foolishness. And they'll know that there's something permanent there all the time. And the arguments, philosophical arguments, are there in the scriptures. They're there in all the Upanishads, taking different approaches because of the subtlety of the subject matter. And so they will tell us about the waking state, the dream state, the dreamless sleep state, the witness. They'll walk us through the different sheaths of the bodily existence. They'll compare this body to an elongated city. They'll tell us that we are relating to the world because we're looking through, if you like, various apertures in the skin, the eyes, and the ears, and so on. And when we take that consciousness and stop it flowing outwards and make it stable and put it in a poised condition, as it were, then we get peace of mind. Today is United Nations Peace Day. How will we get peace of mind? If we want world peace, well then, people within nations have to get along with each other. Society has to get along with each other. And if we want national peace, then nations have to get along with each other. And if we want world peace, then all these nations have to get on together. And if we want all these nations to get along all together, then the people have to be peaceful. And if the people need to be peaceful, that means we have to find the peace inside ourselves. And everyone has to do it and see the holistic aspect of it, that there's only one thing there, one without a second, looking like a multiplicity, looking like a fragmented thing. So we have to understand these principles, and to make it easy for us, different positions are being told to us. If you didn't catch it this way, look at it this way, look at it that way. So we have to have this discernment. Viveka is the primary quality that we need to cultivate. And then there is vairagya, detachment. What does that mean? It means that once we understand the reality of something, we're no longer attached to the unreality. Automatically. And then there are 6 treasures, 6 disciplines, 6 cultivating factors which are necessary. Concentration has to be there. Self-control has to be there. Forbearance has to be there. Faith has to be there. Faith in what? Faith in the scripture, the evidence of realization. Faith in the teacher. Faith in oneself. Concentration, all of these faculties, there are 6 of them. And then, above everything else, the 4th component, without which nothing else happens, thirst. We have to have a thirst for freedom, or a thirst for the truth, or theistically a thirst for God. That's what is necessary. So then there's another question here. While discussing Raja Yoga yesterday, we learned about the flow sense organs, nerve centers, mind, intellect, soul, and vice versa. Does it mean the soul Purusha participates, makes decisions, feels happy, sad? The answer is no. Or is it presented to the soul only for witnessing, yes, and enjoying the experience? If yes, is it possible to just be a witness without any feelings or thoughts? You're doing that anyway. We're all witnesses. So let me use the analogy of a play. And the famous Shakespearean actor Irving comes to mind. He plays the part of Hamlet. When he's on the stage, he talks in Elizabethan language. He learns his lines, well learned, and he's conscious of his part, conscious of his role. And part of that consciousness was he had to go to a makeup department and have his face painted in such a way that the audience can see his features. Then he has to dress in the appropriate clothing. Then he has to wait for his entrance. then he has to go on, playing his part under lights. At no point does the Irving character, does the actor Irving, think he is Hamlet. He plays the role of Hamlet, he plays it convincingly. He may enter into that temporarily, but unconsciously he knows, I'm not Hamlet. When this is over, all this makeup is coming off. The Elizabethan clothes are going to be changed for other clothes. I'm going to go home to my wife, and I will not talk to her in Elizabethan language. Oh, mine wench, put mine victuals on my table, so that I may enjoy thy repast. What a foolish thing he would say to his wife like that. So we are playing the role. It's called a waking state. Now we are a witness. We are the witness Irving playing the part. And we are always that. Even though we identify with the part, there is always a witnessing part, because the mind has the capacity to look at the objects in front and also have a glimpse of what is behind. And that is why we say I. We say I because we know that there is a self there, even though we have mixed it up. We have decided, I'm not Irving, I'm Hamlet. A teacher tells us, no, my dear fellow, you're actually Irving. We have to learn that. And then the actor has a capacity also to watch the play. He can go into the audience. He can go and sit in the theater and say all the other actors playing. This is called a dream consciousness. Still there's a witness, and the witness is always the enjoyer. If you, Swami Vivekananda's example, if you go to an art gallery, who enjoys the art gallery the most? The spectator who's come in to enjoy the pictures, the witness of them, or the artist who's anxious, will I sell paintings? What will they think of my paintings? Did I make a mistake here? Will they make the right interpretation there? Will they write in the newspaper, this was rubbish? Does everybody have enough snacks and what have you on the opening night? All of these are worries. It is the one who goes to enjoy the paintings, who is stress-free. He is simply enjoying. Supposing this stage becomes a blank, supposing all the scenery is removed, only lighting is there, blank stage, and you are witnessing this blankness. This blankness is equivalent to a dreamless sleep, but all along there's a witness. So there is always a witness, whether we acknowledge it or not. And the witness, the seer, can never be seen. The knower can never be known. The thinker can never be thought of. It doesn't move. It doesn't have any qualities. It is existence itself. It is consciousness itself. It is bliss itself. These descriptive terms are applied to the supreme principle. When we discover the Atman, we've discovered the supreme principle. So the Vedanta philosophy only has 3 tenets. There is only one existence. That existence in you is one with this. And this relative world is mithya. It is apparitional, that's all. We have to learn to realize it more and more. So the Purusha does nothing. The Purusha beams. And when we sit where the Purusha sits and sit in our own true nature as pure being, we can also beam. So then the second part of your question, if yes, which I have said is yes, is it possible to just be a witness without any feeling thoughts? Yes, of course. Absolutely. That is called meditation. But what about visualization and all these other things in meditation? Yes, colloquially, we call this meditation also. But Patanjali's 8 steps, meditation dhyana, is the number 7. It's not number 1. And that means only one thought is in the mind at that point. When no thought is in the mind at all, we call this samadhi. the 8th step. Okay, so I hope I've dealt with all the questions. Do you have a question?
Yeah. What? I think you've already answered it. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that one should have a steady mind. So one should not be adverse to the sense object or attracted to the sense object. What role does emotions play in the path to liberation? We see with Ramakrishna, intense devotion to Kali.
Yes.
So how is it just no emotions for sense object, but emotions only for God?
Yes. So you see, there are different levels in the human personality. If we decide if we are living in the relative world, which we are, and so we can't say, you see, we can't say we should not be emotional. We can only say that emotions are there, they can come and they can go, and they can be replaced with higher emotions. See, Ramakrishna says when tears flow from the eyes, coming back also to one of the questions, when they go out from the sides, this is weeping for joy, and from the insides is weeping out of grief. So there's no doubt that the ecstatic phase of spiritual realization is emotional. It's taking the emotions to a higher level, to an expressive level. And then that becomes a kind of step. In the yogic language, it is called Shooter Chakra. That means that when that understanding, which is not quite the supreme and not quite the relative, then is an expression of emotions comes, the stirring of the heart, like the yearning, that then in devotional life becomes what is called prema. So ecstatic love. Ramakrishna exhibited that, no doubt. But then Ramakrishna also could transcend it. And so he would go into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi for some 6 months. Normally within 21 days, the body falls off. You become like the salt doll that disappears into the ocean and never comes back. So for that reason, we know that at least he was a little unique. Not a little unique, but he was extremely unique. And so for that reason, worth studying about all these different states, because he went all through all these different states. So some people might say he was a jnani. And if he was a jnani, what would if you study his conversations, you'll see he gives different answers to different people according to their capacity. And so you'll see on the one side, he talks about love of God. On the other side, he talks about this neti, this process of not this, this process of discernment. So he had the facility to move in any way he wants to suit the person. But for most people, emotions will play a significant role, because anybody who loses their temper is an emotional person. And I've never met anybody who hasn't been angry at some point in time. So these are versions of energy that can be usefully diverted into higher realms. That's the idea. The material that we have, the raw material we have, can be transformed into something higher. Our concern with thinking and rationale and reasoning and science can all be converted into discernment. All our emotions that are easily swayed can easily be converted into a higher dimension of appreciation and thankfulness and wonder and adoration. All our activity, all our actions with our hands and legs and so on and so forth can all be converted into service to humanity, seeing the God in everything and in everyone. So these are faculties that can be employed spiritually, and must be, actually. All of them must be spiritualized. All of them must be gradually weaned off the secular area into the spiritual area and given a more meaningful dimension. And all of these will be employed as ways.
So they're tools.
They're tools, but we have to be careful, because although they are tools, they are sensitive instruments. Sensitive instruments. Because there's a danger of thinking, well, God isn't real, just a means to an end, just a device. And that would not be true. God is as real as any other relative thing. What we call God is the highest understanding to the human mind of the Absolute. The highest reading to the human mind of the Absolute. Not my words, these are Swami Vivekananda's words. So, follow-on question. Then, what's the point or purpose of the soul having these experiences? Is there not any link between each soul's potentially divine and uncovering it through these experiences? How does it happen if there's no learning or participation? You see, as long as you feel your embodiment, there's every point in it. As long as you don't feel you're embodied, there's no point in it. So do you feel embodied? If you don't feel embodied and you're full and free, blessed are you. But if not, join the human race. And, we have to orientate our understanding, our mind, and our realization toward this person who we are in depth. It is the Prakriti that acts and does everything. Nature does everything. But on the basis that this Purusha is present. Because of its presence, things move. Let me just read the question again to make sure that I understand it, that I've answered it or attempted to answer it. So, what's the point or purpose of the soul having these experiences? The soul does not have these experiences. When you see, we have to be careful in this language. If by soul you mean jiva, that means that Purusha that feels embodied, then that has these experiences. But when you separate that, the soul in its pristine state, so to speak, because all these words are difficult. State means something limited. So we say, as it were. Then in its pristine state, it has no qualities at all. It is, with an apology we say, it is Satchit Ananda. It is pure existence. Pure consciousness, pure bliss. These are not qualities, these are essences. So there's any link between each soul is potentially divine. Why do we say it's potentially? There was a question like that last night, I think, or the other night. Why say potentially? Well, because as long as you feel you're not there yet, it's potential. As long as the seed is not a tree, it is potential. And uncovering it through these experiences, how does it happen if there's no learning, participation, and so on? One part of the answer to your question would be, so if it is not permanent, if life is not permanent, if life is only relative, if it's designed for us to be driven toward an unfolding, otherwise called an evolution. Same thing, a paper folded, unfolded. Then what is the point of life itself? That's answered only if we take this world to be a lila, a play of waves. Now that has a practical implication for us because it makes us look at life very differently. It makes us look at life in a more real way, but also in a strategic way. We can now enjoy the play which is going on. Then you might say, I don't see any joy or fun in refugees or people suffering. Well, this is true. But you see, there's only one existence playing these various parts. And when we understand that, we can also understand that, within the relative world, the law of causality operates. But as soon as we understand that there's one existence, then all of these seem like characters on the stage, where if you have a drama, let us call it an Irish pantomime, where you have to have certain components. There has to be a chorus, there has to be a villain, there has to be a hero, there has to be a joker, there has to be scenery, there has to be a plot. All of these things are necessary. If you take it like that, if you take this world as a creation, then that Supreme is a creator. If you take this as a series of waves, then the divine becomes a supreme dancer or player.
But how does you know? Maybe I'm not going to express this well, but you know, when you think of the witnessing, and you think of Satchitananda, you think of the quality, that are not attributes. That the absolute is consciousness, is knowledge, is existence. Essence is existence. Like that's I can understand. That's like a tune going one way. But then where does the personal God then?
No,
the personal God seems like a counter melody or something.
Not at all. It's complementary. Because you see, so this existence, this Sat, pure existence, comes out as pure as the creator creating. It comes out as creativity. It comes out as our wish to survive. It comes out as our wish to perpetuate the existence and procreation. This consciousness which is there,
does that not sort of make it on the side of Leela, that it's on the side of the play, that in order to make the play
don't
possible.
Just discuss it as a play. The play is enjoyable. The play is necessary. And the play is what we're stuck with, by the way.
Yeah, no, I can understand that in order to have the possibility of experience,
yes,
you have to have subject and object. And therefore, if there has to be objects,
then
there has to be
creation. But as the great philosopher Nissen said, you know what I'm about to say.
No, go on.
As the great philosopher Nissen, the great philosopher Nissen? Oh, the car manufacturer. He has big billboards. Life is a journey, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, that's like saying, that to have, and I agree, because a lot of people enjoy life, but not everybody. Some people find it an incredible burden, and other people find it, it's wow.
Yes, the whole idea of Vedanta philosophy is to go and enjoy life, please. The whole value of Ramakrishna and what we might call Neo-Vedanta is to say that Nitya, the eternal, is on one side of the coin and the Leela is on the other side.
Yeah, that's the whole. Like a coin is a whole, and the sidedness is,
So we are weighted toward the Leela side.
So it's sort of like that. The absolute would be.
But the Leela is an expression. Leela is an expression of the Nitya, And it
Yeah.
comes out in the whole of life. If we didn't find those signatures, we would doubt it.
But is it like, maybe this is
Why do we want joy anyway?
well, everybody wants to be happy.
Yes, because our nature is bliss.
Yeah, but is it like that metaphysically? Is it like that the absolute, in order to be complete, has to give rise?
No, the absolute doesn't have to become.
Because if it couldn't give rise to incompleteness,
It's a contradiction in terms. Contradiction in terms. The absolute can never become and can never be. Oh, you can. The absolute is the absolute.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay. The absolute is totally unconditioned. We don't know.
Yeah.
See, when you say,
but I mean, if it couldn't give rise to experience, if it couldn't give rise to objects, it wouldn't be complete, would it?
it's
The possibility of experience wasn't
absolute
included in the absolute. It wouldn't be absolute.
See, the word complete and incomplete are irrelevant when you say absolute. I know it's beyond your comprehension, beyond your description. Leave it where it is, therefore, and then realize it. When you realize it, of course, then the relative goes away by itself, of course.
Yeah.
And the two cannot coexist.
Yeah.
So when you're in the absolute, the relative is gone. When you're in the relative, you won't see the absolute. So when do we see the absolute? We see it in meditation. Then when do we see it exhibiting in its working, waking state, in its form, with name and form and causality and so on? When we see the world in front of it, in front of us, interpreted as a divine play of waves, where every face is God's divine face.
That's like lowering.
Yes. And love of God is the key to that for most people.
Thank you, Swami.
Okay. All right, we close that off now. Thank you. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Guru Mahagat Swami.
Guru Mahagat. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Swamiji.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Bonne soirée.